Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we'll be looking at the Russo-Ukrainian invasion from Putin's point of view. This was only possible when he opened up about his concerns with the French President Emmanuel Macron. How we might know that Putin is just paranoid about the whole Ukraine situation and wants to protect his country and the state he annexed 7 years ago. So hit the subscribe button and let's jump right into this video. A couple of weeks ago, the US were warning Ukraine and Europe about a possible invasion. Things were harsh and people were losing their minds on what was to come. But on the 24th of February, the Ukrainians woke up with explosions around them, petrified, and they ran out of their homes to save themselves. Putin was lying through his teeth all these days, trying to veil his agenda, and now the country was under fire. Putin's phone was out of reach, and the queues at the gas station were long. People were leaving the country to save themselves, while most stayed to fight back. The Ukraine battalion is very small as compared to the Russian armed forces. Russia outnumbers Ukraine in all aspects, and when Russia infiltrated Ukraine from 3 sides, the armed forces were divided further, making them even more weaker. Now that the Russians were in Ukraine, exploiting their national integrity, the civilians fought back and they managed to protect Kiev from Putin's puppet. This makes me realize what kind of job it is to follow orders without asking the morals behind it. Bombing an area with humans incapable of fighting back? The only power Putin has over these military forces is just a salary, and it breaks everyone to see them in the line of fire damaged by a decision so barbaric. But Ukraine never took them as prisoners of war, instead took them to their infantry and provided them with all the medical assistance needed. Ukraine stood strong and proved to us that if there is a will, there's always a way. But before all of this, President Volodymyr did ask for some help from various countries, and when other countries only could supply military weapons, it did go a long way. We could see Ukrainian civilians tossing Molotovs at the Russian forces. The whole scenario made us feel proud and powerful looking at the country rising above fear and successfully defending itself from Putin. But it would not be for long. India's ambassador to UN, Mr. T.S. Trimurti, said that India has decided to abstain from the vote in view of the totality of the evolving situation. We demand safe and uninterrupted passage for all Indian nationals, including our students who are still stranded in Ukraine, particularly from Kharkiv and other cities in the conflict zones. This remains our foremost priority. The statement by T.S. Trimurti added, the Russians were helping these Indian students where they ceased fire in Kharkiv, where thousands of Indian students were stranded amongst the bomb shellings, crying by the road asking for help. Russians have also helped India during the evacuation from Kabul in 2021. The Russians managed to convince the Taliban to let the Indian mission staff go to the airport. With all of these going on, President Zelensky counted on his wins as he sips a cup of tea with his team. French President Emmanuel Macron had a diplomatic idea and he went on with the approach. On 7th February, a meme quickly surfaced as the two sitting on a long table very far away in a 2-person meeting. French President Emmanuel Macron and Putin. The meme was a viral hit, but if you're wondering why they were having a meeting in the first place, well, we found out. Now President Emmanuel Macron reminded Putin of the Minsk agreement. The 13 points the Minsk agreement was based upon were immediate ceasefire, withdrawal of weapons from both sides, self-government for Donetsk and Luhansk, humanitarian assistance, exchange of hostage and prisoners, resumption of socio-economic ties including pension, Ukraine to restore control at the borders, decentralization in Luhansk and Donetsk, elections in Donetsk and Luhansk, withdrawal of foreign armed formations and military equipment, intensification of trilateral contact groups working, including representatives of Russia, Ukraine, and OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, pardon and amnesty for fighters caught in political offenses, constitutional reforms in Ukraine, specifically Donetsk and Luhansk. Putin in his defense said some things that might be a little under-exaggerated. Now, even though it looks like an invasion, everyone thinks it's an invasion, but for Putin. It is a military special operation, and it's going according to plan. The report said that the main reason behind the Russian forces bombing the capital of Kiev, as said by Putin, was to destroy the southern neighbor's military capabilities and capture what Putin regards as dangerous nationalists. They never intended to occupy the territory. It was an anti-Russian disinformation campaign. And the Russian forces were not targeting any civilians. Now, when I told you about the Indian students, it kinda makes sense. They didn't attack the areas where Indian students were located in Ukraine, and rather they helped them escape the borders. The main reason why Russian forces were not able to infiltrate Kiev was that they maybe had stricter orders from Moscow to not harm civilians. The Russian demands, as per said in the meeting with Macron, Putin wants Russian sovereignty in Crimea and does not want to see any military operation or done by the Ukrainian forces to claim Crimea back. Now Putin, as he has been saying all along, wants to demilitarize Ukraine and wants them to stay in a neutral position for Kiev. Well, look who is puppeting Ukraine now. Now Putin made a strict condition that the settlement could be made only if Russia's security interest is met and taken into account. Further adding that Russia is ready to negotiate with Ukraine if these criteria are met. And this brings us to Putin's point of view. In this day and age, no one wants war. It is rather more sabotaging to both the parties, regardless of who rings the victory bell. Now, from Putin's point of view, Ukraine joining NATO would further feed his paranoia. Putin is already scared of losing Russia's grip over Crimea and having a lethal military standing at the borders. It could mean that if Ukraine was to join NATO and Russia would be surrounded by NATO, an organization that was specifically made to fight against the Soviet Union. Russia wants Ukraine to stay neutral and less powerful than them to gain strategic power over at least one side of the border. But since the strategies have changed, Putin is now also attacking civilians. Putin, in my opinion, is very paranoid about his position and his area of control, and he's very good at keeping a poker face. So we don't know for sure, but he is legitimately scared when he demands Russia's legitimate security to be recognized. Now other powerful countries are on their way to avenging Ukraine with sanctions, and with this, the banks are filled with Russians withdrawing their money before they lose their value. The ATMs are filled, and this is much like a contrast from the day when the gas stations were filled with Ukrainians escaping the line of control, the same way as the Russians are now in queues. The Russian currency ruble fell by 30%, and Putin knows what's coming. This should have softened him. During these wars, it's not only the leader that suffers, but the whole country, ranging from psychological aspects to economic ones. This time around, Putin knows that this will be a very hard time to recover from. Now, since we have seen him doing it before, it's really hard to trust Putin. If Ukraine remains defenseless and demilitarized, then Ukraine is at the mercy of its bordering countries, and this is something that Ukraine would not want. Even if Russia does ceasefire, the damage is already done. And with a weak economy, a peace treaty would surely include Putin paying for the damages caused in Ukraine, and this seems like a huge loss for Russia. Things are looking very bad for Ukraine as Putin warns the West, saying these sanctions are an act of war. I guess now Putin does not take it as a special operation anymore, but a direct response to the US sanctions imposed on Russia. More on these later. Thank you so much for watching. Let's pray for Ukraine, and we'll see you next time.